Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive that's could be pretty fascinating. I'm going through the research one of you sent in, and clearly you're interested in Revelation, but not just the end of the world stuff people always talk about. You want to get into the nitty-gritty of what John of Patmos was really saying about things like power and justice, how believers should act in the world. And let me tell you, this book, it's anything but some preachy, out-of-touch text.
You're absolutely right. It's a mistake to think Revelation's just about, escaping reality. People call it anti-historical. But John was seriously tuned into how history plays out, what it all means in the grand scheme.
Which is wild when you think about it, because on the surface, it's this book full of crazy images. I mean, beasts, trumpets, not your typical political commentary.
No.
But I'm looking at some of theologian Oliver O'Donovan's work here, and he argues that John of Patmos, he was really trying to grapple with the political realities of his time.
Exactly. Don't forget, he was living under Roman rule, a system that demanded total obedience, often used its power, well, unjustly. So, yeah, it's less like a news report, more like this intense symbolic look at how good and evil collide in the halls of power.
So this whole idea of revelation in history, you mentioned being fascinated by it. What makes John's view of history so different, so unique?
Well, John doesn't see history as like a straight line. He sees these recurring patterns of power, how empires rise and fall, how humans, when they're in charge, they tend to get corrupted. It's less about, this date, this event, and more about getting those deeper cyclical movements of history.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So when he's using all this intense imagery, like the beast from the sea, he's not necessarily talking about one specific empire, right?
Bingo. He's using those images as symbols for something way bigger. It's like this.
Yeah.
The beast isn't just one empire. It's that constant impulse for power and domination that he saw over and over again throughout history. Something's never changed, right?
So less about playing Guess the Empire, more about recognizing those timeless patterns of power. Like they say, power corrupts. Well, John was saying that back in the first century.
Exactly. And that takes us to another huge theme in Revelation, this idea of the two cities, Babylon and the New Jerusalem, two totally different visions of what power can be.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting for me, these contrasting ideas of power. You've really got my attention with this. So does John just see all of history as this battle between these two cities?
He definitely sets up a stark contrast, that's for sure. But you're right to ask if it's that simple. He's not just painting good guys versus bad guys.
So more to it than meets the eye.
Yeah.
Tell me, how does John view these two cities?
Okay, so he uses Babylon as this image of human power gone wrong. Oppression, greed, all that. The New Jerusalem is the flip side, a redeemed community where justice and righteousness are the norm. But, and here's where it gets really interesting, John hints that even within those messed up human systems, there's still a chance for change, for things to be redeemed.
So even in the middle of all that, what looks like hopeless corruption, John still sees a possibility for hope. That's pretty radical, especially for the time he was living in.
Oh, absolutely. Radical is the word for it. I mean, think about it. He's writing to people who are literally facing persecution from Rome to give them that kind of vision, a hope that even systems that seem totally broken can be transformed. That's powerful stuff.
I can only imagine. So it's not just about individuals trying to escape a corrupt world. It's like John actually believes the systems themselves can change.
Yeah, you got it. And that's what makes this whole New Jerusalem thing so interesting. It's not some exclusive club for the righteous, John makes it clear it's open to everyone. He even uses the image of these open gates. He even says, the kings of the earth will bring their glory into it.
Okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around this, because if it's this transformed community, how can it be open to everyone, even those who are still part of these messed up systems? It seems like a contradiction.
It's definitely a tension that John puts forward, and I'm not sure he tries to totally resolve it. It's more about recognizing that it's not always so black and white. This redeemed community, it's called to be a light to the nations, to be in the world, not hide away from it.
So it's not either. It's about being rooted in that transformed community, but still engaging with the world around you, trying to make a difference.
Exactly. It's holding those two ideas together. And that leads us to another really important aspect of how Revelation thinks about politics, something you were curious about, this idea of true speech.
Yes, that really jumped out at me in what you sent over. What did John think about how believers should deal with those in power? Was it all about overthrowing corrupt systems?
It's more complex than that. Think about those two witnesses in Revelation, the ones who speak truth to power, even though they're persecuted. They embody this idea that believers are called to speak out against injustice, to be a voice for the voiceless, no matter the risk.
So speak up, even when it could cost you. That couldn't have been an easy message for John's audience to hear.
No doubt, but also incredibly empowering. He's telling them they have a part to play in challenging the status quo. For John, real faith isn't passive. It's about actively working to make the world more just.
That's a far cry from how some people see Revelation today. Like, it's just about predicting the future, waiting for the world to end. John's pushing people to act. Did he actually have concrete ideas about what a just society would look like? Or was it more of this general vision of the New Jerusalem?
Yeah.
So it's like he's giving them this picture of a better future, but he's also saying, hey, you've got to be part of making it happen. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and it's not just some vague idea either. John actually gives us glimpses of what this just society might look like. He talks about how God will judge those who abuse power and how, in the end, righteousness and justice will win out.
Which makes sense. If you believe God is truly just, then you can't just sit back and watch while people are being oppressed.
Exactly. And that's where John's critique of empire comes in. He doesn't hold back, He names the injustices he sees all around him.
Yeah, no kidding. Like in those sources you sent, he really lets loose on this figure of the great whore of Babylon. I'm assuming that's not meant to be taken literally.
Definitely not. It's another one of those powerful images John uses to challenge the powers that be. Now, he links Babylon with Rome, but it goes way beyond just one empire.
Right. So again, those deeper patterns, how power corrupts no matter who has it.
Exactly. He's drawing on this Old Testament tradition where Babylon represents the arrogance, the idolatry of human empires throughout history. It's about how power, especially unchecked power, always seems to lead to exploitation and injustice.
And it's not just military power he's talking about, is it? He connects Babylon with wealth, luxury, all that. Seems super relevant today when you think about like the influence of these huge corporations, global trade, all that.
100%. John was ahead of his time in seeing how economic power can be just as oppressive as any army. He talks about how Babylon seduces people with wealth and luxury. It's a more subtle form of control, but control nonetheless.
It's like he's sending us a warning about these systems that can crush the individual, whether it's through brute force or through this sneakier economic pressure.
Precisely. And that's why his vision of the New Jerusalem is so essential. It's not just about escaping a corrupt world, but about building something new, a society based on justice and righteousness. And here's the thing, this isn't just some far-off dream for John.
He actually believes it's possible.
He does. He sees it as the goal, the whole point of history, the culmination of God's plan. But it's not about sitting around waiting for it to happen. Remember those two witnesses, that call to true speech. It's on us to play our part in bringing about that better world.
So it all comes back to having the courage to speak truth to power, to challenge injustice, to fight for a more just and compassionate world, even when it seems impossible.
Exactly. And that's a message that's just as relevant today as it was back then. It's a reminder that we're not powerless, we have a voice, and it's our responsibility to use it.
Wow, we covered some serious ground today. From crazy imagery to ancient empires to speaking out against injustice. It's amazing how relevant these ideas from Revelation still are.
It really is. It speaks to how deeply John understood human nature. The stuff we're dealing with today, power, corruption, injustice, it's nothing new. And neither is the hope for a better world.
Well, on that note of hope and a better world, I want to thank you so much for taking us on this deep dive into the book of Revelation. It's been eye-opening, to say the least.
The pleasure was all mine. And for everyone listening, remember, Revelation isn't just about predicting the future. It's about inspiring us to create a better one.
Who couldn't have said it better myself?
Yeah.
That's all the time we have for today, folks. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive, and we'll catch you next time, ready to unpack even more fascinating ideas.